Live from Keene, New Hampshire, the most watched TV news show in Keene, the Keene Weekly News with Mark Edgington. Coverage of local and national events starts now.
Welcome to another edition of the Keene Weekly News. My name's Mark Edgington, and today is May the 18th. Getting right into the news. Saw there, I got my newest edition of the Keene Sentinel, and I saw that Mary Ray is turning 113 years old in Westmoreland. Here's a picture of her. She's got her little birthday hat on. See her little birthday hat? Cute fuzz around it. Looks like everybody's creating quite a racket, and Mary wishes they'd just be quiet. Well, either way, looks like Lily, her great-great-granddaughter, attended the event. I gotta say, it's a very happy event. All the best, Mary, and I hope you have many, many more birthdays. She's the 22nd oldest woman in the world, right here, Westmoreland, New Hampshire. Next door neighbor in Brattleboro, apparently a naked dancer has been arrested. Walking around naked is one thing, but Brattleboro's live and let live strip attitude toward public nudity has its limits. A man spotted dancing nude on a downtown street has been charged with lewd and lascivious conduct, a felony punishable by up to 5 years in jail. Apparently, Adhi Palar, 20 of Brattleboro, was charged Wednesday after police saw him dancing and performing acts of lewdness involving his genitals and some clothing, said Police Captain Gene Wren. Police didn't see it, but it saw a videotape of someone else took of Pilar. Wren said, last summer young people caused a stir when they began congregating in the Buff in downtown. Brattleboro, which has a history of such behavior, no law against it, considered enacting an anti-nudity ordinance in the wake of all the activity, but Select Board decided against it last September. Some felt the onset of cold weather would be just as effective in discouraging people from taking it off. With weather now warming up, clothes are coming off again. Well, they were right. The cold weather did get people to put their clothes back on. I gotta say, I wonder if it's okay to be it's okay to be naked, but it's not okay to dance naked. It's strange. I mean, what can you do naked? What can't you do naked in Brattleboro? I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't see Mr. Pilar gyrating and gesticulating with a sweater or whatever it was he was doing, but I'd be very interested in seeing that videotape. It's all pretty funny to me. Well, the Sentinel has declared Keene Detour City, and I think it's a name that we're going to earn over the next few years. We're certainly going to start this summer. There's a roundabout going in at Winchester. There's one going in at the corner of Winchester, Maine, and Marlboro. And they're also doing some construction on West Street. It's everywhere. It's a disaster. I shudder to think how much money we're going to be spending on these things. I guess the city council has become flush with so much money. Property values have gone up, and millage rates, of course, are based on property values, and so basically they've doubled the amount of money that they're getting in, and so they just got to do things with it. And in the process, they're going to make it very, very difficult to get around Keene. The detours seem to take you all over the place. There's, I don't think you'll be able to drive down Main Street very far. Oh my God, there's purple lines, there's yellow lines, there's black lines. This map's everywhere. But don't forget the red lines. Oh my God, this is going to be awful. In the name of making traffic better, we're making it a heck of a lot worse. I say we should have just left things alone and maybe gotten rid of those red or left-hand turn red arrows, and that would cause traffic to have to sit at lights less. I was just sitting at one this week. Sitting there, seeing no oncoming traffic. The cars next to me had green lights, but I couldn't go because I wanted to turn left, and clearly I'm too dumb to know whether or not I can turn left into oncoming traffic or not. There weren't any cars there. I should know whether or not I can turn left. Our parents, 20 years ago, they didn't have these red left-hand turn arrows, but somehow We just have to have them. People just can't navigate these vehicles like they used to. I figure if you can't figure out whether or not it's clear to turn left, you shouldn't be driving a car, period. Senator John Edwards, the Democratic presidential candidate, will be visiting Keene on Monday. Public's invited to a forum with Edwards, the Democratic vice presidential nominee for 2004, at Keene State at 12:30 p.m. The forum will be held at the Young Student Center, according to Edward P. Vail, Edwards' New Hampshire Deputy Press Secretary. Following brief remarks, the meeting will be open to questions from the public. Does Edwards have a chance? Maybe. It's a long way to the elections. 2007, the middle of 2007, won't be doing the election until the end of 2008. But we really make our decisions. We weed out the periphery candidates much earlier than that. Early part of 2008, we have our primary here in New Hampshire, and that kind of sets the nation up for who's we in New Hampshire get to decide who's going to be the president of the United States. And I don't think it's going to be Edwards. It looks like on the Democratic side it's going to be Obama or Clinton, and probably a combined ticket in some way or another of those two. Just a guess. Certainly don't know. Anything could happen. It'd be a terrible plane wreck, and Edwards would be the only choice left on the Democratic side. But he'll be here nonetheless, Monday at 12:30, Keene State College. I was watching the debate with the presidential candidates for the Republican side this week on Fox News. Fair and balanced. They said so. And 10 candidates up there. I can't believe they're all coming back. Who's Tommy Thompson? Who's Tancredo? There's ones I can't even remember the names of. On the Republican side, I really like Ron Paul. I thought he did very well. Giuliani blew up at him. I can't believe you say that stuff about America. But I have to agree with him. He said that the 9/11 attacks occurred because of America's foreign policy, the United States foreign policy, the United States government's foreign policy, caused American people to be attacked on 9/11. We've been over in the Middle East for the last 100 years, fiddling around in their business, supporting their kings and their sheiks and all their little petty dictators. I mean, Saddam was ours, the Shah was ours, King Fahd was ours. That's what they're upset about. That's what these people have every right to be upset. I'm not saying they have every right to be upset at the American people. They have every right to be upset at the United States government for meddling in their business. How would we feel if some country was over here dictating who was in charge of our country? I mean, America's supporting a king? We fought a revolutionary war against a king a little over 200 years ago, and now we're supporting one. It seems wrong to me. I think we should be out of those people's business. Bring our troops home from not only the Middle East, but and Iraq and Afghanistan, but bring our troops home from all 131 UN member states we're in. That's 131 nations we have troops in. There's only 190 nations. I mean, we've got the vast majority of them covered. That seems like the definition of an empire to me. They use some other term, hegemony. I'm not sure what exactly that means. Empire seems to be something that most people can understand what the term means. And, we don't run the most brutal empire that the world has ever known, but you kind of have to stick by our line, otherwise there's going to be problems. I don't know. Bring the troops home, put the Department of Defense in charge of defending America, and I think we'd be fine. Now, I'm not saying isolationism. Isolationism means we'd be handling our own commerce. We're not taking any outside, we're not allowing you to do trade or anything with any outside countries. I'm all for trade. I believe that America should have its soldiers at home, but have merchants and people doing business all over the world. And that is not isolationism. That's just practicality. As a matter of fact, it's what most nations do. It's what we expect other nations to do, but we don't expect it from ourselves. Seems like it seems a little hypocritical. Of course, it's the government. They get to do whatever they want. We don't get to say anything about it. Keene news. Looks like the police and fire chiefs are asking for boosted budgets. Of course they are. They're bureaucrats. They always want more money. It's not like they can figure out any way to cost cut. God knows. Say help is needed with court cases and fire coverage. Double-digit % increase in crime and a jump in fire calls has Keene safety officials asking the city council for help. Well, I have a humble suggestion. How about we stop chasing people down for marijuana? You know, just smoking pot just like they're drinking alcohol. It seems the same to me. I don't understand why we're putting any efforts whatever on this. I think that would cut down on on some costs for the police department if you stop arresting marijuana smokers, marijuana users. There you go. There's a little cost-cutting measure right there for you. Fire departments, 92%. 92%. Now that number's a little old, but it's not terribly old. It's probably still accurate. Maybe it's certainly above 90%. More than 90% of fire departments in the United States are all volunteer. Another 3% of fire departments in the United States are combination volunteer and paid professional firefighters. Somehow, the rest of America is not on fire. They have volunteer fire departments and they are not burning to the ground. Perhaps we could look into a combination volunteer force, you know? There's lots of people out there that would love to get into that love to do firefighting and rescue work, and they don't have to be paid $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year to do it. I think that would cut down on the fire department's budget. Many cities across America have ambulance service. I mean, because that's really where it's not a lot of fires in Keene. There's a lot of medical calls. Well, many cities have ambulance service where you're charged when you call for the ambulance. So you go, ring, ring, hello ambulance, I have an emergency. I'm feeling a little warm in here or something. And the ambulance comes and, they take care of you. It's medical service, right? You pay for medical services. The ambulance comes. You get a bill and in the mail a couple of days later or whatever, and you pay it. Rather than us having medical services for people to call and just get rides to the hospital or something. It's cheaper than a taxi, So really that's what an ambulance is. It's a taxi. It's a fast, loud, flashing taxi ride to the hospital. Why shouldn't people pay for that? Makes perfectly good sense. I'm sure that, and matter of fact, there's poor people all over the United States, and somehow they're not dropping like flies because they can't afford ambulance services. I mean, they don't need the money. They don't. There's ways that they could cost cut. I assure you. AIDS services could get a major funding source. On the verge of its 20th birthday, AIDS services of the Monadnock region could be in line for one large birthday present. Your tax money. Happy birthday, AIDS services of the Monadnock region. Here's a bunch of taxpayer money. They didn't agree to it, but we, the New Hampshire Senate and House, have decided that you deserve it. New Hampshire House members are scheduled to vote today on a bill that would provide $1 million to HIV and AIDS support organizations around the state, including more than $35,000 to AIDS services of Monadnock region, the Gilsum-based center that was formed in 1988. If it passes the House and earns the signature of Governor John Lynch, the bill will be approved. The bill, approved by the Senate in March by a 20-3 vote, will provide the group with its first ever direct state funding, according to AIDS Services Director Susan McNeil. AIDS is a terrible disease. I'm not saying people with AIDS shouldn't get money. I'm saying that taxpayers shouldn't be funding these things. This is medical research. I don't care if it's stem cells, AIDS, or cancer. We can handle this through charitable organizations. AIDS has lots and lots of charitable organizations out there working to fund research. The American Cancer Society, the American Heart Association. These are very adept organizations. They can handle it. We should not be spending taxpayer money on these things. Let taxpayers keep their money, and decide for themselves whether or not they want to give the money that they earned to these charitable organizations. Look, America is the most charitable country ever in the history of Earth. We will fund these things, but they should be done voluntarily, because when somebody gets, if somebody gets money and it's not theirs, they didn't earn it, they didn't work to earn it, they don't really care quite as much how they spend it. And that's how it is with the Senate, and that's how it is with organizations that take money from taxpayer money. It's just not as valuable to them. You know, they didn't get it through fundraising efforts. They got it from the government. So then they deserve it. It's theirs. It belongs to them. Well, I would say they don't deserve it. It isn't theirs, and it doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the New Hampshire taxpayers. And I'd like it back so I can decide whether or not I would like to give it to these organizations. That seems fair to me. And, you know, I'm not singling out AIDS. Don't hate gay people. I'm just talking about what we should do as far as funding for diseases. Governor Lynch in the news again. Governor Lynch plan finds needed support for the age that would be 18 House backs dropout measure. Governor John Lynch earned a narrow victory for his dropout prevention bill Wednesday in the House of Representatives, as lawmakers voted 183 to 170 to raise the compulsory school attendance rate from the age of 16 to the age of 18. Lynch has had no trouble winning support for the idea in the Senate, where it passed last year, and again this year, by a 17-7 margin. Supporters, including business and education groups, hail the bill as an anti-dropout, anti-poverty measure that will better prepare the state's teenagers to enter the workforce. I don't know about you, but I don't think I learned anything in high school in the last 2 years that really prepared me to enter the workforce. It seems like a lot of the things I learned didn't really prepare me. But you know, that's just my own personal opinion. The question I would have to raise is, you know, it says it's an anti-poverty measure, but aren't some families poor, and couldn't they do better if their 16-year-old decided to go out and work and support the family rather than, you know, have to go to school 8 hours a day? I mean, that's a lot of work time, that 8 hours a day. I think that a real anti-poverty measure would be to allow 16-year-olds to go out and work and support their families. I didn't come from a family like that. My parents sent me to a private school most of the time, and you know, I didn't have to go out and work for the family, but I know that my dad did. My dad quit school early. He's one of the smartest men I ever have met in my life, and you know, somehow he made it. Didn't go through school. Of course, school was better back then. I picked this article just because I found the picture so disturbing. Look at the American serviceman with the gun to the head, one would assume of a terrible Iraqi Al-Qaeda member, something like that, with the blindfold and his head down. The caption beneath it, I'll read it for you, says, "Detained suspect insurgents are guarded at an Iraqi security force base in Bakoba." That's northeast of Baghdad, Iraq today. Does this guy look like he's getting guarded? He looks like they're executing him. I'm not saying that they did execute him, but why does that guard have his gun to this guy's head? This war is out of control. This picture proves it. We need to get all of our troops out of Iraq as quickly as possible. Put them on the first thing smoking back to the United States, because that's just scary to me. Let the Iraqis figure out what kind of government they want to have. That's how we did it here in America. We fought for our freedom. They didn't fight for whatever freedom we're bringing them. They're having it foisted upon them. And that's not how you get freedom. You have to want it. You have to fight for it. And this is scary. Another odd little bit of news. Teens charged in bullet caper. 2 teenagers face criminal charges after police say they placed shotgun shells around Dover High School in hopes that classes would be canceled for the day. 2 16-year-old boys were arrested Monday afternoon, charged with causing false public alarms. They were also suspended and face possible expulsion. Police Chief Anthony Carluso said the teens placed the shells in plain view in hopes that the school would be dismissed. Once we found other shells dispersed throughout the school, we strongly suspected that this was a hoax, said Colarusso. We suspected it was a hoax, but we did not want to take any chances. Can't take chances, God knows. You take a chance every day when you walk out your front door, Mr. Coluso. We don't take any chances with the safety of the students. The students found the first shotgun shell around 9 a.m. and the school was evacuated about an hour later. Classes resumed around noon. During the search, police found 3 more shotgun shells and a handful of .22 caliber handgun cartridges. So 22 shorts. I mean, it wasn't 20 years ago when kids were bringing guns to school for shooting practice. 22 shorts, I wouldn't consider that any reason for a huge alarm. Shotgun shells, I mean, it's not like they're going to blow up or anything like that. They're just shotgun shells. They lay there inert until a firing pin hits them. These 2 16-year-old boys are silly, and they deserve to be punished. I don't think they deserve to be arrested and have some kind of permanent record for the rest of their lives being labeled as terrorists. Now, maybe on their 18th birthday these records will be sealed, but we all know that it's still, when they look up your record, it still says sealed, so people wonder what happened. It seems to me that the suspension and face possible expulsion, that seems appropriate to me. I think the school should handle this, not the police. I don't see any reason for police to be involved in some shotgun shells laying around and some 22 shorts. It's going a little crazy, I think. This whole zero tolerance thing is it's beyond the pale. Nurse to plead guilty over ploy. Portsmouth. A New Hampshire nurse is scheduled to plead guilty to charges she used her position to have a former boyfriend involuntarily committed for psychiatric care. Julia Lynch, 30, of Rollinsford, is scheduled to appear in Portsmouth District Court on Monday on charges of false swearing and tampering with public records at Portsmouth Regional Hospital, where she was a nurse. She's also charged with stalking and false imprisonment. Well, I guess Julia abused her power. Not that that doesn't happen when you have power, but this is probably a little lesson for the men out there. When you find a good woman, keep her, treat her well. Treat her like the queen she is, because she could be somebody nutty like Julia Lynch, 30, of Portsmouth. New Hampshire lags behind most states in processing prisoners' DNA. The 1994 murder of a college student in Alaska would still be a cold case if New Hampshire had not passed a law in 2002 requiring DNA samples from all state prisoners convicted of violent crimes. Kenneth Dion, 37, of Rochester, was charged in April with the murder of Bonnie Craig, who was abducted on her way to an early morning class at the University of Alaska, Anchorage, then beaten, then raped, then killed. The break in the case came when police matched DNA evidence from Craig's body to Dion, who was serving a 6 to 15-year prison sentence in New Hampshire for several armed robberies. The case has been given new strength to a bill considered in Alaska that would require police to collect DNA samples from adults arrested for any felony or crime against another person. But New Hampshire's law is considerably narrower. New Hampshire is one of just 7 states that don't require DNA samples from all convicted felons before 2002. The state required samples from the people convicted of sexual assaults. Since expanding the requirement to violent offenders, the state has struggled with a backlog of cases, leading to delays in information being entered into the federal database. Though Dion has been in prison since 2003, his DNA sample wasn't taken until 2 years later. More than 1,200 violent offenders have been entered, but there's a backlog of 450, said Melissa Staples, the assistant director of the New Hampshire Crime Lab. You know, I know that this DNA thing solves crimes, and I've got to say that doesn't make me feel bad that this gentleman here, Dion, has gotten himself in trouble for awful things that he did to Bonnie Craig in Alaska. But it worries me, the police department collecting DNA samples, first from felons. I mean, New Hampshire has a nice narrow amount of people that they collect samples from. Many states, New York, for instance, has proposed expanding it to misdemeanors. I wonder how long it's going to be before they're collecting DNA samples from everybody. Just take them, you enter kindergarten, public school, and draw a little blood, get your DNA, make sure they know who you are, track you for your whole life. It's a disturbing trend, and I think right now we're probably walking the tightrope. I'm not disturbed by prisoners getting their DNA taken, the most violent of offenders getting their DNA taken and matched across the United States. But I know that some states will abuse this power. New Hampshire, we live free or die. We understand these things a little better, but it's a little scary. So I'd like to do my little editorial on compulsory education. Now the governor's proposes to raise the age of compulsory education from 16 to 18. Why do we need to be compelled to be educated? I mean, our children are our most valuable assets. People invest, as a matter of fact, a child will cost you more than a fine Italian sports car over that child's life. People invest heavily in America in their children. It seems to me that this whole compulsory education thing it's misplaced. These kind of rules, they only restrict the sort of education that your child can get. Suppose your child wants to be a ballerina or a figure skater or a painter or something like that. Well, what if they want to dedicate all their time after their 16th birthday to ballerinaing or skating or painting or whatever it is that they're going to do? This compulsory education rule that they have going on here, it prevents that. And I think that we should be able to decide what we want to do as far as education. Is the government going to decide, like they did in the Soviet Union, what sort of education we get once we get out of high school? Well, you'll be best doing the ballerinaing or the painting or figure skating. I mean, it's disturbing, the government being involved in education like this. Thanks for listening. You've been watching the Keene Weekly News. It's May the 18th, 2007. My name's Mark Edgington. If you have any comments, write me at mark@freekeene.com. That's mark@freekeene.com. Thank you.